Hey everyone! Before the story starts, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, it really helps a lot. Now, sit back and enjoy the story. I've spent years catching liars and I slept with the best one. The ultrasound photo arrived on a Tuesday morning, nestled between bills and grocery store flyers like a grenade wrapped in gift paper. My wife Vanessa stood at our kitchen counter, her manicured fingers trembling just enough to sell the performance, tears already pooling in her perfectly lined eyes. "Eli," she whispered, her voice catching in that practiced way that had fooled me for 8 years of marriage. "I have something incredible to tell you." I looked up from my laptop where I'd been reviewing security camera footage for a client, my bread and butter as a private investigator who specialized in corporate theft. The irony wasn't lost on me later. There I was, catching other people's liars while living with the best one I'd ever seen. Vanessa slid the black and white image across our granite countertop. The same countertop she'd insisted we needed to keep up with the neighborhood standards. Her hospital PR job paid well, but not granite countertop in Maine. Well, that should have been my first clue. "We're having a baby, Eli, after all these years of trying." The ultrasound showed what looked like a tiny bean floating in grainy darkness. Medical text surrounded the image. Dates, measurements, doctor signatures. It looked official. It looked real. It looked like everything we'd supposedly wanted since our 3rd anniversary when Vanessa first brought up kids. I stared at the image, feeling something twist in my chest. Not joy, not yet. Something else. Something that felt like the moment right before you realize you've been played. "This is from Dr. Martinez at the clinic downtown," I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Yes, yesterday afternoon. I wanted to be sure before I told you." Vanessa moved around the counter, sliding her arms around my neck. She smelled like the expensive perfume she bought with money we didn't have. "I know we've been having problems, but maybe this is exactly what we need." Problems. That was one way to put it. The late nights when she claimed to be working hospital fundraisers. The mysterious phone calls she took in the bathroom. The way she'd started treating me like a roommate, she barely tolerated rather than a husband she'd once claimed to love. "I should call Jenna," I said, reaching for my phone. "She'll want to know she's going to be an aunt." Vanessa's grip tightened on my shoulders. "Maybe we should wait. Just keep it between us for a while. My sister's a radiologist, Van. She'll be excited to see the scan." Something flickered across Vanessa's face. Too quick for most people to catch. But I'd spent years learning to read micro-expressions for my job. Fear, panic, calculation. "Of course," she said, her smile returning. "I'm just being silly. New mom nerves, I guess." I snapped a photo of the ultrasound and texted it to Jenna with a message. "Guess who's going to be an aunt? Van's 12 weeks along." The response came back in less than 5 minutes. "Call me now. Don't let Vanessa hear." I felt myself go cold inside. I excused myself to the bathroom, locked the door, and dialed my sister's number. Jenna answered on the first ring. "Eli, where did this ultrasound come from?" "The clinic downtown. Dr. Martinez." "Why?" "Because I know every radiologist in this city, and Martinez hasn't worked here in 3 years. He moved to Portland." "And Eli," Jenna's voice dropped to a whisper. "This isn't even from an American hospital. The formatting is European, probably German or Swiss. The measurements are in centime only. No inches conversion. No American clinic would produce a scan like this." The bathroom suddenly felt too small. I gripped the phone tighter. "Are you sure?" "I'm looking at it right now on my computer. I ran it through our database. The serial number on the machine doesn't match anything in Maine." "Eli. This ultrasound is either very old from overseas or downloaded from the internet." "Exactly." I closed my eyes, feeling 8 years of marriage crumble in real time. "Jenna, I need you to do me a favor. Can you prove this is fake?" "Already on it. Give me 2 hours." When I came out of the bathroom, Vanessa was sitting at the kitchen table looking radiant and maternal. She'd changed into a flowing dress that did nothing to hide her completely flat stomach. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Perfect," I lied, settling back into my chair. Jenna is thrilled. She wants to take us out to celebrate this weekend. That sounds wonderful. For the next 2 hours, I watched my wife. Really watched her. The way she kept touching her stomach. The way she'd started leaving pregnancy books lying around. Books I now realized had appeared overnight. The way she kept checking her phone and smiling at messages she wouldn't let me see. When Jenna called back, I was ready. It's definitely fake. She said, I found the original image on a German medical website. It's been used in at least a dozen medical textbooks. Someone just photoshopped new dates and doctor information onto it. Can you prove it? I already have. I've got screenshots, metadata, the works. Eli, what are you going to do? I looked through the kitchen doorway at Vanessa, who was now on the couch reading What to Expect When You're Expecting with theatrical concentration. I'm going to play along, I said, and then I'm going to destroy her. The next morning, I woke up with a plan that would have made me shabbily proud. Vanessa was already in the shower singing softly, something she only did when she thought she was winning. The sound made my skin crawl. I called in sick to work and spent the morning in my basement office, the one room in our Victorian house that was entirely mine. Surrounded by filing cabinets and surveillance equipment, I felt more at home than I had upstairs in months. My first call was to Dave Morrison, my oldest friend and former police detective, who now ran his own security consulting business. If anyone could help me document Vanessa's lies, it was Dave. You want me to surveil your own wife? Dave's growly voice carried disbelief and amusement in equal measure. I want you to help me catch her in the act. She's running some kind of con, and I need evidence. What kind of con? I explained about the fake ultrasound. Dave whistled low. That's cold, even for a cheating wife. Most of them just lie about working late. So, you'll help, brother. I wouldn't miss this for the world. But Eli, you sure you want to go down this road? Sometimes it's better not to know. I already know. Now I want proof. That afternoon, I put on my best concerned husband act. I found Vanessa in her home office typing furiously on her laptop. When she saw me, she quickly minimized whatever she'd been working on. Hey honey, I said, leaning against the doorframe. I've been thinking about the baby. Oh. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to close the laptop entirely if needed. I'm worried we should probably start looking into the financial side of things. Cribs, diapers, college funds. Maybe I should increase my life insurance. Vanessa's eyes lit up in a way that should have been heartwarming, but instead made me want to shower. That's so thoughtful of you. I was also thinking we should start putting money aside for unexpected medical expenses. You know, in case there are complications. Complications. For just a moment, her mask slipped. She looked genuinely confused, like an actor who'd forgotten her lines. Well, you're 33. The doctor probably mentioned that pregnancies after 30 carry higher risks. Right. Yes, Dr. Martinez did mention that. Martinez, who hadn't practiced in Maine for 3 years. Maybe I should come to your next appointment. When is it? Vanessa's fingers drummed against her desk. Actually, Dr. Martinez prefers to see first-time mothers alone for the first few visits. Something about creating a safe space for questions. That's unusual. He's very progressive. I nodded like this made perfect sense. Well, when you do see him next, ask about genetic testing. My cousin had some issues with her pregnancy and early testing really helped. Of course, I'll ask. That evening, while Vanessa was supposedly at a hospital board meeting, Dave and I sat in his van across from the Pine Needle, an upscale bar downtown where Vanessa's car was parked. Through telephoto lenses, we watched my wife cozy up to a man I recognized from the hospital's website. Dr. Colin Royce, chief of surgery and married father of 2. Well, there's your smoking tool, Dave muttered, snapping photos. Question is, what's the endgame? If she just wanted to cheat, why fake a pregnancy? Money, I said, watching Colin slide an envelope across the table to my wife. It's always about money. We followed them to Colin's downtown penthouse, a place that definitely wasn't in his wife's name. They stayed for 2 hours. When Vanessa finally came home at 11 o'clock, she smelled like expensive cologne and lies. "How was the board meeting?" I asked from the couch. "Boring budget discussions." She kissed the top of my head, a gesture that once would have felt loving but now felt like a patronizing pat. "I'm exhausted. I think I'll go straight to bed. The baby must be taking a lot out of you." "Exactly. Growing a human is hard work." After she went upstairs, I sat in the dark living room staring at the fake ultrasound she'd left on the coffee table like a trophy. My phone buzzed with a text from Dave. "Got clear shots of the money exchange. This is bigger than just an affair." The next morning, I decided to test a theory. I woke up early and made Vanessa breakfast in bed, something I hadn't done in years. "What's the occasion?" she asked, looking genuinely surprised. "I was thinking about what you said yesterday about Dr. Martinez and the safe space thing. It made me realize I haven't been as supportive as I should be." Vanessa softened, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd married, the one who used to laugh at my jokes and steal my hoodies and talk about our future like it was something beautiful we were building together. "You've been very supportive, Eli. I want to do more. I was thinking, what if we started a baby fund? I could liquidate some investments, maybe take out a small loan. We could put together $30,000 or $40,000 for all the expenses." The change in Vanessa's expression was immediate and unmistakable. Greed, pure and simple. That's incredibly generous. It's our baby, our future. 30,000 would certainly help with everything. Actually, I was thinking more like 50. I want our child to have everything. Vanessa set down her orange juice with shaking hands. $50,000 too much? No, it's perfect. But Eli, what if something goes wrong? What if we lose the baby? There it was. The setup for her exit strategy. Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But I have a good feeling about this pregnancy. I think this baby is going to change everything for us. I wasn't lying. This fake baby was definitely going to change everything. By the end of the week, I had transformed into the perfect expectant father. I bought pregnancy books, researched baby names, and even started looking at minivans online. Making sure to leave the browser history where Vanessa would see it. Every enthusiastic comment about our future child made her smile a little wider and dig herself a little deeper. Meanwhile, Dave and I had been busy. We documented 3 more meetings between Vanessa and Colin, always involving money changing hands. We'd also discovered that Colin owned the penthouse under a shell company, and that he'd been seen with at least 2 other women who weren't his wife. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Mrs. Hadley, our 70-year-old neighbor, who had apparently missed her calling as a CIA operative. "That wife of yours has been getting a lot of packages lately," she told me while I was checking our mailbox. Medical supply companies from what I could see on the labels. Probably prenatal vitamins and things like that, maybe. But I've had 4 children, dear, and I never needed to order pregnancy tests by the dozen. Pregnancy tests, plural. That afternoon, while Vanessa was at work, I searched our house like a crime scene. In the back of her closet, hidden behind winter coats, I found a box containing dozens of pregnancy tests, fake ultrasound images printed on photo paper, and a folder labeled Baby Fund. Inside the folder were bank statements for an account I'd never seen before, deposit slips showing regular transfers from our joint account, and a handwritten note in Vanessa's careful script. "C says we need $50K minimum to make this work. E is finally taking the bait." My hands were shaking as I photographed everything with my phone. 8 years of marriage and I'd been reduced to a mark in a con game. The woman who promised to love me in sickness and health was literally making me sick to steal my health insurance money. But the worst part was yet to come. At the bottom of the box, I found a second ultrasound image. This one showing twins. Apparently, one fake baby wasn't ambitious enough for Vanessa's plans. That evening, I cooked dinner and opened a bottle of wine. Vanessa came home looking radiant, practically glowing with anticipation of whatever payday she thought was coming. "You seem happy," I observed, pouring her a glass of sparkling cider since she was pregnant. "I had my appointment with Dr. Martinez today." "How did it go?" Vanessa took a deep breath, like an actor, preparing for a big scene. "Eli, I have amazing news. We're not having one baby. She pulled out the twin ultrasound, watching my face for a reaction. Twins. I managed to sound shocked instead of disgusted. Two perfect, healthy babies. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Dr. Martinez says everything looks wonderful, but what? Well, twin pregnancies are considered high risk. He's recommending some additional tests and procedures. It's going to be expensive, even with insurance. How expensive? Around $36,000. $36,000, exactly what she thought she could get away with based on my earlier comments about the baby fund. That's a lot of money, Van. I know, and if we can't afford it. She let the sentence hang, implying dire consequences for our fictional children. I reached across the table and took her hand. Her wedding ring felt cold against my palm. We'll find a way. I'll liquidate my retirement account if I have to. Really, Vanessa? These are our children. I'd do anything for them. The next morning, I called Dave with an update. Twins now. This woman has serious ambition. She's asking for 36 grand. What are you going to do? Give it to her. Eli, you can't be serious. Not real money. Remember that counterfeiting case you worked last year? The one where they seized all those fake bills? Dave was quiet for a long moment. Those bills are evidence in an ongoing federal investigation, but they look real enough to fool someone who's not expecting to be conned. What you're suggesting is poetic justice. Another pause. I'll see what I can do. 2 days later, I presented Vanessa with a manila envelope containing $36,000 in counterfeit 20s that looked absolutely perfect to the unaided eye. Her hands actually trembled as she counted them. Eli, I can't believe you did this. I told you I'd do anything for our family. She kissed me then and it felt like being kissed by a snake. I'll take this to Dr. Martinez tomorrow and get everything set up. Actually, I was thinking I should drive you. This is a big moment for us. Panic flashed across her face. You don't need to do that. These appointments can be long and boring. I don't mind. Actually, Dr. Martinez specifically said no partners for this particular procedure. Something about keeping stress levels low. What kind of procedure requires $36,000 in cash? It's not cash. I'll have them convert it to a cashier's check. Perfect. The next morning, I kissed Vanessa goodbye and watched her drive away with $36,000 in fake money. Then I called Dave. She's mobile. We're on her. I spent the day in my office trying to work on legitimate cases while my phone buzzed with updates. Vanessa had gone straight to First National Bank, where she had attempted to deposit the cash. The teller, trained to spot counterfeit bills, had immediately flagged the transaction and called security. By noon, my wife was in federal custody. The call came at 2:30. Mr. Carver, this is Agent Sarah Mitchell with the FBI. Your wife has been arrested for attempting to deposit counterfeit currency. She's claiming you gave her the money. That's impossible. I gave her legitimate funds from my retirement account. We'll need you to come in for questioning. Of course, I'll be right there. I hung up and allowed myself one moment of pure satisfaction. Then I called my lawyer. The FBI interview was almost anticlimactic. I sat in a sterile conference room across from Agent Mitchell, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who looked like she'd heard every lie ever told. Your wife claims you knowingly gave her counterfeit money, she began. Agent Mitchell, I withdrew $36,000 from my retirement account to pay for medical procedures related to my wife's pregnancy. I slid a folder across the table. Here are the bank records showing the withdrawal along with the ultrasound images my wife showed me. Agent Mitchell examined the documents. These ultrasound images are fake. I know that now. My sister, who's a radiologist, identified them as European scans with falsified information. So, you knew the pregnancy was fake when you gave your wife the money? No, I discovered that after she was arrested. That's when I started looking more closely at everything she'd told me. It wasn't technically a lie. I'd learned more details after her arrest, even if I'd suspected the truth beforehand. Agent Mitchell made notes. Mr. Carver, we've Traced these counterfeit bills to a batch cessation last year. Any idea how your wife might have obtained them? None whatsoever. We'll need to examine your financial records. You're welcome to them. 3 hours later, I walked out of the FBI building a free man. Vanessa, on the other hand, was looking at federal charges for currency fraud, conspiracy, and a handful of other crimes that carried serious prison time. But I wasn't done. That evening, I called Jenna and filled her in on everything that had happened. My God, Eli. I knew she was lying about the pregnancy, but I never imagined it was this elaborate. There's more. She's been having an affair with Dr. Colin Royce from her hospital. I think he's the mastermind behind the whole scheme. Colin Royce, I know him. He's married, has 2 kids, his wife is lovely. Not anymore, he's not. I'm going to make sure of that. Eli, be careful. You've already won. Don't do anything that could backfire. But I was past being careful. Vanessa had tried to steal my money, my trust, and 8 years of my life. Colin had helped her do it. They both deserved everything that was coming. The next morning, I drove to Colin's hospital with a folder full of surveillance photos, bank records, and documented evidence of his affair with Vanessa. I requested a meeting with the chief of staff, Dr. Elizabeth Harper, a stern woman in her 60s who ran the hospital like a military operation. Mr. Carver, I understand you have concerns about one of our physicians, Dr. Colin Royce, has been conducting an affair with my wife and helping her commit fraud. I have evidence. I laid out everything. The photos of Colin and Vanessa together, the money exchanges, the fake pregnancy scheme, and Vanessa's arrest for currency fraud. Dr. Harper examined each piece of evidence with clinical detachment. This is very serious, Mr. Carver. If true, Dr. Royce has violated multiple hospital policies and potentially committed criminal acts. It's all true, and there's more. I showed her the evidence David gathered about Colin's penthouse and his relationships with other women. Dr. Royce appears to be using his position at this hospital to prey on vulnerable women. My wife may not be his only victim. Dr. Harper's expression grew colder with each revelation. Carver, I want to thank you for bringing this to my attention. We take these matters very seriously. What happens now? Dr. Royce will be suspended pending a full investigation. If these allegations are substantiated, he'll be terminated and reported to the medical board. I left the hospital feeling lighter than I had in months. But I still wasn't finished. That afternoon, I paid a visit to Tara Williams, Vanessa's best friend and business partner, in what I now realized had been a years-long campaign to separate me from my money. Tara ran a high-end beauty clinic downtown, the kind of place where wealthy women went to maintain their facades. Eli. Tara's surprise seemed genuine when I walked into her clinic. I heard about Vanessa. I can't believe what happened. Can't you? Something in my tone made her smile falter. I'm sorry, Tara. I know you were part of it. The fake pregnancy, the money scheme, all of it. I have no idea what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and played a recording Dave had made of Tara and Vanessa talking outside the Pine Needle 3 days earlier. Their conversation included explicit discussion of how much money they could extract from me and when they planned to disappear. Tara's face went white. Where did you get that? Does it matter? What matters is that you helped my wife try to steal $50,000 from me. Eli, you don't understand. Vanessa said you were emotionally harmful. She said she needed money to leave you safely. And you believe that justified fraud? I was trying to help a friend. You were trying to help yourself to my money. I leaned across her reception desk. Here's what's going to happen, Tara. You're going to call every mutual friend we have and tell them the truth about what you and Vanessa did. You're going to publicly apologize for your role in this scheme. And you're going to pray that I don't decide to press charges against you as an accessory. You can't prove I did anything illegal. I can prove you knowingly participated in a conspiracy to commit fraud. That recording is just the beginning of what I have on you. Tara stared at me for a long moment, then slowly nodded. What do you want me to say? The next few weeks unfolded like a perfectly choreographed dance of destruction. Vanessa, unable to make bail on federal charges, sat in county jail while her world collapsed around her. Colin was fired from the hospital and faced his own criminal investigation. Tara, terrified of prosecution, had indeed called our mutual friends and confessed her role in the scheme. But the real satisfaction came from watching our social circle react to the truth. I'd spent months enduring pitying looks from friends who clearly thought my marriage was falling apart because of my own failures. Vanessa had been spinning stories about my supposed shortcomings for years, painting herself as the long-suffering wife of a man who couldn't appreciate what he had. Now those same friends were calling to apologize. "Eli, I had no idea," said Jennifer Walsh, a mutual friend from our college days. "Vanessa told us you were controlling and paranoid. She said you accused her of cheating constantly." "She was cheating constantly. I know that now. I'm so sorry we didn't see through her lies." The apologies felt good, but they didn't undo the damage. These people had been willing to believe the worst about me based on nothing more than Vanessa's word. They'd excluded me from social gatherings, stopped returning my calls, and generally treated me like a pariah. But there was one group of former friends who so hadn't called to apologize. The Riverside Country Club crowd that Vanessa had insisted we join 3 years ago. These were the wealthy, self-important people who had embraced Vanessa's version of our marriage troubles and made it clear that I was no longer welcome in their social circle. It was time to pay them a visit. The Riverside Country Club sat on 50 acres of manicured grounds overlooking the Penobscot River. It was the kind of place where membership cost more than most people's annual salary and where the parking lot looked like a luxury car dealership. I drove my 10-year-old Honda Civic through the gates and parked between a BMW and a Mercedes, feeling like exactly what these people had always seen me as, an outsider who didn't belong. Inside, the club's main dining room buzzed with the quiet conversations of people who had never worried about money. I spotted my targets immediately: Brad and Susan Morrison, no relation to my friend Dave, along with their usual crew of hangers-on. Brad had been particularly cruel during my social exile, making pointed comments about men who can't keep their wives happy and suggesting that Vanessa deserved better than someone who was obviously not meeting her needs. I walked directly to their table. "Eli," Susan's surprise was genuine and uncomfortable. "What are you doing here? I thought you might want to hear how the investigation into my wife's criminal activities is going." The entire table went silent. Brad's face flushed red above his golf shirt. "Look, Eli, we heard about Vanessa's legal troubles, but that doesn't mean what, Brad? That you owe me an apology for treating me like garbage for the past 2 years. You were always accusing her of cheating because she was cheating with Dr. Colin Royce, who's now facing criminal charges for fraud and conspiracy. She was also running a long-term con to steal my money, which is why she's currently in federal custody." I pulled out my phone and showed them a photo taken of Vanessa and Colin together. "This was taken 3 weeks ago, right around the time you told me at the charity auction that I should treat my wife better if I wanted to keep her." Brad stared at the photo, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "The fake pregnancy was just the final phase of a scheme that's been running for over a year," I continued. "She's been stealing money from our joint accounts, running up credit cards in my name, and planning to disappear with her boyfriend once she had drained me dry." "We didn't know," Susan whispered. "No, you didn't know. But you were perfectly willing to assume the worst about me based on lies from a woman who was actively committing felonies." I looked around the table at faces that had once been friendly, then cold, and were now filled with shame and embarrassment. "Here's the thing about truth," I said. "It always comes out eventually, and when it does, you find out who your real friends are." I turned to leave, then stopped and looked back. "Oh, and Brad, next time you want to give marriage advice, maybe make sure you're not taking it from a federal criminal." The dining room had gone completely quiet. Every conversation had stopped. Every eye was on our table. I walked out through that silence, feeling like I was floating. But I still had one more stop to make. Colin Royce's penthouse had been seized by federal investigators as part of their fraud investigation. So, I found him where Dave's contacts said he'd been staying. Cheap motel on the outskirts of town. The kind of place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. I knocked on the door of room 237 at 8 o'clock on a Thursday evening. When Colin answered, he looked like a man who'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive clothes wrinkled, and his eyes had the hollow look of someone who'd lost everything. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want to talk." "I have nothing to say to you." "That's fine. You can listen. I pushed past him into the dingy room. It smelled like cigarettes and desperation, a far cry from his former penthouse. Nice place, I said, looking around at the water-stained walls and threadbare carpet. Really captures that fallen from grace aesthetic. Colin closed the door and leaned against it. If you're here to gloat, I'm here to make sure you understand something very clearly. I turned to face him, and for the first time in this entire ordeal, I let my anger show. You helped my wife try to steal $50,000 from me. You convinced her to fake a pregnancy, create fraudulent medical documents, and run a con that could have destroyed my life. Vanessa came to me with the plan. You just what? Decided to help her commit multiple felonies. Decided to use your medical credentials to make her lies more believable. Colin slumped into a chair. You don't understand. I was in debt. The penthouse, the lifestyle, my wife's spending. I needed money. So, you decided to steal mine. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Vanessa said you were wealthy, that you wouldn't miss the money. I'm a private investigator in Maine, Colin. I'm not wealthy. That $50,000 represented years of savings, my entire retirement fund. Colin looked up at me with something that might have been shame. I'm sorry. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. I sat down across from him, close enough that he couldn't avoid looking at me. But here's what I really came to tell you. This isn't over. You think losing your job and facing criminal charges is the end of it, but you're wrong. What do you mean? I mean, I've spent my entire career learning how to destroy people who think they're smarter than everyone else. I know how to find information, how to document evidence, how to make sure the truth comes out. Colin's face went pale. Your wife left you, didn't she? Took the kids and moved back to her parents' house. How did you? Because I made sure she found out about all of it. The affairs, the fraud, the fake medical documents you helped create. I sent her copies of everything. You bastard. Your medical license is under review by the state board. You'll never practice medicine again. I know. The other women you conned, and yes, I found them. They're talking to prosecutors. Turns out Vanessa wasn't your only victim. Colin put his head in his hands. What do you want from me? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to know that when you target someone, you better make sure they can't fight back. I stood up and walked to the door. And Colin, if I ever see you near my wife again, if you ever contact her, if you even think about trying to continue whatever relationship you had, I will make what's happened to you so far look like a vacation. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. Enjoy the motel. 3 months later, I sat in a courtroom watching Vanessa plead guilty to federal fraud charges. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by orange jail scrubs and the reality of what she'd done. Her lawyer had negotiated a plea deal, 18 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of probation and full restitution. When the judge asked if she had anything to say, Vanessa stood and turned to look at me. I'm sorry, Eli. I never meant for it to go this far. I stared back at her without expression. Sorry wasn't enough. Sorry didn't undo 8 years of lies, manipulation, and betrayal. Sorry didn't give me back the money she'd stolen or the friends she'd turned against me. After the hearing, I walked out of the courthouse into bright autumn sunshine. Dave was waiting by his car, smoking a cigarette and grinning. How does it feel? He asked. Like justice. What's next? Next, I go home to my house. My house since the divorce is final and I get on with my life. The divorce had been swift and brutal. With Vanessa in federal custody and facing criminal charges, her lawyer had advised her not to fight my petition. I kept the house, the business, and what was left of our assets after restitution. She kept her prison sentence and her criminal record. That evening, I sat on my front porch with a beer, watching Mrs. Hadley tend her garden. She waved at me and I waved back. It was good to have neighbors who weren't trying to con me. My phone buzzed with a text from Jenna. Dinner Sunday. I'm making your favorite. I texted back. Wouldn't miss it. Another text. This one from Jennifer Walsh. Book club is starting up again. You should join us. I'll think about it. I replied. The truth was I was looking forward to rebuilding my social life. The people who mattered had come back. Apologizing for believing Vanessa's lies and welcoming me back into their lives. The people who didn't matter, like Brad and Susan Morrison, had simply disappeared, probably too embarrassed to face me. As for Colin, he'd pleaded guilty to his own set of charges and received 2 years in federal prison. His medical license had been permanently revoked, his wife had divorced him, and he'd lost custody of his children. The last I heard, he was working at a call center in another state, living in a studio apartment, and driving a 15-year-old Honda. I finished my beer and went inside to my quiet, peaceful house. No more lies, no more manipulation, no more fake emergencies designed to separate me from my money. Just silence, solitude, and the satisfaction of knowing that justice had been served. In my office, I opened my laptop and started working on a new case. A simple insurance fraud investigation that would probably take a week to solve and pay enough to cover my mortgage for 2 months. It was good to be back to work. It was good to be back to my life. But most of all, it was good to know that sometimes the good guys really do win. 6 months after Vanessa's sentencing, I received an unexpected visitor. I was working in my garden, something I'd taken up to fill the quiet hours, when a car pulled into my driveway. The woman who got out was about my age with kind eyes and a nervous smile. She introduced herself as Lisa Royce, Colin's ex-wife. I wanted to thank you, she said. For what? For exposing what my husband was doing. I know it probably wasn't about helping me, but you saved me from years more of lies. We talked for an hour. Lisa told me about the other women Colin had been involved with, the money he'd stolen from their joint accounts, and the elaborate lies he'd constructed to hide his double life. I thought I was going crazy, she said. He was so good at making me doubt myself. I know the feeling. Are you dating anyone? She asked as she was leaving. No, I'm not ready for that yet. When you are, call me. I know some wonderful single women who would love to meet an honest man. I laughed. I'll keep that in mind. After she left, I went back to my garden. The tomatoes were coming in well, and I had enough vegetables to last through the fall. It was a simple pleasure growing things, nurturing them, watching them thrive. My phone rang. Dave's number. You busy? He asked. Just gardening. What's up? Got a case that might interest you. Cheating spouse, possible fraud, clients willing to pay double your usual rate. Send me the details. Already did. Check your email. I walked inside and opened my laptop. The case looked straightforward. A woman suspected her husband of having an affair and hiding assets before filing for divorce. It was exactly the kind of work I was good at and exactly the kind of justice I believed in. I called the client and scheduled a meeting for the next morning. That night, I sat on my porch with another beer, watching the sun set over my neighborhood. Mrs. Hadley was still in her garden, and she waved at me again. A couple walked by with their dog, nodding hello. Normal people living normal lives. No cons or schemes or elaborate deceptions. It was exactly what I wanted. My phone buzzed with one final text of the day from a number I didn't recognize. This is Vanessa. I get one phone call a week. I wanted you to know I'm sorry for everything. I hope you can forgive me someday. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. Without responding. Some things didn't deserve forgiveness. Some people had to live with the consequences of their choices. I finished my beer and went inside, locking the door behind me. Tomorrow would bring new cases, new challenges, new opportunities to help people find the truth. But tonight, I was content to sit in my quiet house, surrounded by the peace that comes from knowing that justice had been served, that truth had prevailed, and that sometimes the underdog really does get his revenge. This is where the story ends. If you liked it, make sure to hit the like button, share it with others, and subscribe for more stories like this.